In GTA Online, there are a load of air vehicles. A lot of people will just go for all of them over what would be a very long period of time. Doing that is one of the biggest mistakes you can make in GTA Online, since some air vehicles are simply just a waste of money. In this video, we'll go through the air vehicles you definitely need in GTA Online, whilst also touching on a few that are completely useless and you should simply just avoid purchasing. But before we do get into all of that, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss any content just like this. So, getting back to the video. So first up, we have the P996 laser. This comes in at $6.5 million and is at Warstock cash and carry, just like every single air vehicle in this video. The P996 laser is a great jet. It has homing missiles and it does have explosive bullets. This is a great jet for doing preps or just for going around Los Santos. It is a very fast jet, so you can easily get from one place to another. That's why it's probably the best jet to purchase. It is a very steep price, so if you are a beginner, you should probably not purchase this since there are a lot of other purchases before this that you should make. But this is a purchase I definitely recommend making at some point in GTA Online. Having a jet just like this is really useful. Next up is one that I was probably going to speak about in this video at some point, and that is the Oppressor Mark II. Whether you're one of the haters or someone that loves the Oppressor Mark II, it is very useful for prep missions if you're doing something like a heist. Being able to quickly get from one place to another whilst having homing missiles is extremely useful. Some people find it useful for other circumstances, but I won't go there. It is quite expensive, but as a beginner, this is what you should be aiming towards purchasing realistically. It is just such a useful vehicle to have in GTA Online. And some people would just say this is necessary and something you really need. So this is something you should try and get at the beginning of the game. Up next is something you might not have expected to be on this list, and that is a cargo bob. This is actually really useful for some preps, such as getting the getaway vehicles for the casino heist. Having to transport those quite a while, especially if your facility is in Palito Bay, then I would really suggest having a cargo bob, since you're easily able to transport those vehicles from one place to another by flying over loads of different hills instead of having to drive it all the way there. So this could save quite a bit of time. It's also not too much money, so I would suggest making this purchase at some point. But one thing to make sure that you do is purchase the standard cargo bob. There is another cargo bob for a couple $100K more, which is the exact same but just looks a bit different. So really don't go for that one and just go for the standard version. Up next is the Akula, which is probably the best helicopter in the game, particularly because of its stealth mode. In an Akula, you are able to go under the radar. This means that people on the map won't be able to see where you are and will have no idea where your location is. So this is a very good purchase for something like that. If you're dealing with some griefers or anything like that, then this is a great purchase. And if you do like helicopters, then this is definitely the one to go for. There is a bit of a debate whether the Annihilator Stealth is better, but realistically it just isn't. The Akula has everything the Annihilator Stealth has, but just does it a bit better. So definitely go for the Akula over the Annihilator Stealth if that's something that you're choosing between. So yeah, for helicopters, the Akula really is the way to go. So for air vehicles that you really need and are definitely worth getting, that's sort of it. We're actually now going to look at vehicles which are still worth getting, but aren't 100% necessary. So first up, we have the Buzzard. This is probably the best air vehicle for beginners. Because of its cheap price, you can get it very quickly and is one of the fastest helicopters in the game with homing missiles. So for doing preps as a beginner, this is perfect. It will do everything that you need to do. Obviously, it's not the most practical with it being the helicopter, but it is very useful. And next is the Avenger. This is similar to the MOC and the Terabytes and the Kosatka, but it is a armored helicopter. This thing can withstand so many missiles and is basically just a flying tank. Whilst this is very cool and seems like it would be very useful, it's actually not 100% necessary. And that is because what you can do in an Avenger, you can actually do elsewhere without having to purchase an Avenger. But it is still very useful and it has some good fun with it. So I would suggest purchasing this at some point, but just remember that it isn't 100% necessary. So next we have the Deluxo. This is actually very similar to the Oppressor Mark II in many ways, but the Oppressor Mark II is faster and more convenient simply because it is smaller. They both don't really have any armor and come in at pretty similar prices, so I would go with the Oppressor Mark II over the Deluxo, but if you do want to purchase the Deluxo at some point, it isn't not worth it, so by all means go and purchase it. It is still a good purchase, but the Oppressor Mark II is just a bit better if compared to the Deluxo, but go ahead and purchase it if you want to. And next we have the Alkonost. And whilst this isn't a very useful jet, it is a massive jet, and obviously that is pretty cool. If you're wanting to get a massive jet, then this is the one to go for. There's definitely some fun to be had with this, and it isn't too expensive if you look at its size. So I would go for this if you want to. It is worth it in that circumstance. However, do just bear in mind that it isn't exactly useful and won't really be needed for any sort of missions, but there is some good fun to be had with it. Next up, we have another jet, and that is the B11. This is commonly compared to the Laser, and some people actually prefer this jet to the Laser because it has some slightly better handling, which could give you the advantage in something like a dogfight. But for going around the map and doing some missions, the Laser is probably the better option. However, the B11 is a lot cheaper, so if you want a jet but don't want to spend that much money on a jet, then this is the one to go for. But realistically, they're both worth it and the choice is yours. You could go for both, you could go for neither, or you could just go for one or the other. It's really up to you. And it's a similar story with the Hydra. This one is a bit more expensive than the B11 and is probably the worst when compared to the B11 and the Laser, but it does have a VTOL mode, which the others don't. So they're all worth it, to be honest. You could get all three or just pick one of them. A lot of this really is down to personal preference, but if I did have to pick one myself, it would be the Laser, simply because of its speed and you can easily get from one place to another, and for missions it's probably the best option, but this really is up to you. And lastly, we have the Tula. This is the only plane that can go on water, so whilst this could be useful, it might also not be useful, so just think whether you might be going on water or whether you think this would be cool to have, and then go ahead and purchase it. If you're never going to go on water and you're not really that interested, then obviously don't purchase it, but otherwise you might want to think about getting this plane. So let's have a quick look at what you should 100% not purchase. And first we have the Titan. This is because the Titan is always available at LSIA, because it will always spawn in there. So there's really no reason to purchase this, unless you're for some reason going to be using it a lot, then maybe you should purchase it, but other than that, you should 100% not purchase this item, because you can easily get it for free. And the same goes for the Luxor Deluxe, which is a pretty obvious one, and this is always found at LSIA, so it is a completely pointless purchase, especially if you're going to get the more expensive gold version, which is just an absolute rip-off. So don't purchase this unless for some reason you really want to. And everything else that I haven't mentioned is up to you. If you think it would be a good item and that you would enjoy it, then by all means purchase it. At the end of the day, a lot of this is down to enjoyment, and if there's an item you think you would enjoy, then you should definitely purchase that, and otherwise don't purchase it. Realistically, for making money, all you'll probably need is a buzzard as a beginner, and then an Oppressor Mark II, and maybe a cargo bob. But you should really buy what you'll enjoy. Everything looked at is what I recommend, and what is 100% not worth it, which is the Titan and the Luxor Deluxe. So every air vehicle not mentioned is worth it if you think you'll enjoy it or find it useful for something. So hopefully you now know what air vehicles you should avoid and what air vehicles you should get in GTA Online. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to like, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss any content just like this. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.